Hello everyone, I'm Chris Dauphin, your TSEA Communications Director. Welcome to the AskTSEA video podcast, our monthly show where state employees ask the questions and TSEA provides the answers. We're excited to begin, but first we want to remind you to please subscribe to our AskTSEA YouTube channel and follow us on our social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at TSEA Online. All right, so thanks for tuning in. Let's get into it. Okay, welcome to Ask TSEA Episode 5. I'm your TSEA Communications Director, Chris Dauphin, and with me today is Executive Director Randy Stamps. And we're going to start off with a few announcements, some deadlines coming up and other things we want to make you aware of, and then we'll get into our general discussion. Coming up a week from this Thursday, on Thursday, January 30th, is our Middle Tennessee Legislative Dinner. The dinner is at 5:30 p.m., at Sweat's Restaurant at 2725 Clifton Avenue, and that's in Nashville. And we're asking everyone if they're going to attend to RSVP by this Friday, January 24th. And you can do so on our website at tseaonline.org. And when you're on the website, just to the right side, you'll see a red square that says Middle Tennessee Legislative Dinner. Just click there and follow the instructions to RSVP. The next deadline coming up is a save the date for Lobby Day. Our Lobby Day will be Tuesday, March 3rd here in Nashville. And I've heard that we're expecting the governor to speak. Is that right?
Yes, we've actually have a commitment from Speaker Cameron Sexton, Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally, and the governor. They will all be speaking to us in the chamber that morning.
Well, that's going to be amazing. So if you can make that day, please plan to be there. And that would, what time does that usually start? 8 in the morning?
I believe 8 or 8:30. The speakers, I believe, are going to begin at 9 o'clock. But we want folks in the chamber no later than 8:30 because we always have some business matters we need to deal with. But we have a dedicated group that comes up from Shelby County, and they usually try to get here about 8:30. So we hope to have a full house.
Now, this time of year, we wanted to give you a little bit of a reminder, and this will also be in our paper, about the inclement weather policy. And you can also visit our website. We'll have a story up there on the inclement weather policy. They'll have a link to the policy. But just as a reminder, just because there's inclement weather, it doesn't usually warrant the closing of state offices. A lot of state employees think when they look out the window, if it's really bad, that state offices are closed, but that's not necessarily always the case. And if they haven't closed state offices, it becomes a personal decision for the employee. Now, if you do make a personal decision to stay at home for safety reasons, you can use annual or comp time for your absence. But there are occasions where the governor or the governor's designee will close some state offices, and usually they'll announce that through the media. And so I can say if it's snowing pretty bad outside, turn on your TV, check Twitter, and keep an eye on the governor's announcements. And in that instance, you'll receive administrative leave with pay for your regularly scheduled working hours. Now, there are some employees who work in positions where they have to come into work regardless because of the nature of their job. Those would be folks that maintain the health and safety of others, or they work in the Department of Correction watching inmates, and these folks will have to go into work. But if those employees must work, they're eligible for regular comp time for hours worked during the period of the closing. So if you have some questions about that, you can call us, call our compensation and benefits staff, call Keisha Pittman or Gail Robb at 615-256-4533. Or you can email Keisha at Keisha, Keisha, .Pittman, Pittman, at tseaonline.org. Okay, so moving on. In other news, Randy, January 1st, there were some new laws that went into effect at the federal level that impact state employees. And these are laws on overtime. And from what I understand, the federal government has raised the overtime exemption from $23,660 annually to $35,568. And what that means is that if you earn under $35,568 and you're a salaried employee, you must now receive overtime for any hours worked over 40 in a week. Before it was 23,660, so that's quite a jump.
It is.
That's over $10,000. So that's probably going to affect a lot of state employees, I would imagine.
It's affected folks not only in state government and federal government, but across the private sector too. So it's a huge change. We wish there had been a little bit more notice about the change because, again, as Chris pointed out, this has been developing now really for a couple of years. But at the federal level, there's been a lot of changes, and there were some delays in implementation. And some of the departments can see that we could probably done a better job of communicating out that the change was coming. But the departments will have their own individualized rules, I understand, about what type of compensation people will receive. It could be flex time, it could be comp time. In some cases, it could be actual payments in your paycheck. But it's a big change. We just need a little bit of patience as we work through the communications we're having with the various departments. But overall, it should be good news for employees. And so we just need to make sure that we're hearing from folks out there in the field, letting us know what's going on in your particular instance. And if there's issues we need to address, then we'll go directly to the commissioner of your department, and then eventually, if necessary, to DOHR about any issues that are arising because of the change.
Okay, so, and again, you can reach us at 615-256-4533 or on our website, tseaonline.org, or email us at info@tseaonline.org. There was some really good news that happened on January 7th, right as we got back in to the swing of things here coming out of the holiday. Governor Lee signed an executive order to provide 12 weeks of paid family leave for state employees. Well, that's quite a precedent and great news, welcome news for state employees.
It is tremendously good news. And Governor Lee was able to do it by executive order for Team Act employees. However, he expressed an intent from the very beginning to share this benefit with all state employees, and some of the higher education facilities, institutions, are already working on that. But it is a great benefit. I want to encourage, most of our members are under the Team Act, but we need to extend this to all state employees. It's one of those cases where we need to work together to make sure that we extend it to all state employees. That includes folks in judiciary, folks in higher education, the legislative staff, the staff of all of our constitutional officers. There's a lot of folks that aren't included that we want to work to help pass the legislation to include it for all state employees. So we'll be asking our members to engage their legislators about that topic.
As a reminder, when we talk about the executive branch employees, just, there's three branches of government. A lot of our employees or members also express a little confusion over this whenever we say that it applies to executive branch employees. Mm-hmm. So we have the judicial branch, the legislative branch, and the executive branch. And then under the executive branch, you've got your preferred service and your executive service. So when they say executive branch employees, they're talking about those employees that fall under the executive branch. Preferred service employees are the majority of state employees. So when you hear executive branch, more likely than not, that applies to you. Okay, and then of course a qualifying event is just considered a serious health condition. They're not talking about a stomach ache or something like that. Now, that could turn into a serious health condition, but they're just talking about an illness, injury, impairment, or physical or mental condition that involves inpatient care or continuing treatment by a healthcare provider. And of course, DOHR is working on the policy guidelines, like Randy had mentioned, and we're in communication with them. And they're aligning it with their current rules on FMLA. But those should be out by March 1st, which is when the executive order becomes effective. So like Randy mentioned, we talked about during the legislative session, they've got a bill that they're working on to include some other state employees. Now, in that bill, as I understand it, higher ed's not included in the legislation, but part of that is just based on the function of how, or the organization structure of our government. Isn't that right?
Well, and higher education has always been very independent, so the legislature is usually reluctant to mandate that they do something. But again, we're going to be working with them to implement it. And again, I think we're going to talk about along the way that there's already some steps being taken at some of the universities to let this apply.
Yeah, I have some of the information here on higher ed leave. UT recently announced a task force to consider providing 12 weeks paid leave for their employees by July 1st. And in that same press release, they announced a new leave policy to allow UT employees paid time off for organ donation or to donate bone marrow, and that will be effective March 1st. We also heard from East Tennessee State University President Dr. Brian Noland, who said ETSU is reviewing their parental leave policy. So there's some movement going on. This is an important issue. I think these organizations are realizing that it's a value that employees are looking for, and we've got some challenges with turnover and vacancy, and I think this is another benefit that's going to help kind of address some of those concerns. But what's interesting, getting into a little conversation on this, is that what I find interesting about Governor Lee is that he's a spiritual man that's not afraid to talk about his faith. I read an article in the Tennessean recently where it talks about his morning routine. He wakes up every day, he makes a cup of coffee, and then he has some quiet time and reads his Bible. And he does that every single day, and he meditates on what he's got to address that day, and then he moves into the day feeling confident that he's making decisions based on meditating on those ideas. And I just find it interesting that when he makes a decision, he says, well, I think the quote was, "I can sleep well at night knowing I've done what I think is right and just and fair and best for all Tennesseans." And that's it's admirable. And when he came out with this executive order, it tells you a lot that it was an executive order to provide 12 weeks paid leave. He knows this is the right thing to do, and that's how he feels convicted to that. And it's refreshing to see someone step forward with that confidence and with that conviction to his faith.
It is a huge benefit, and I think he did it because he thinks it is the right thing to do. And you pointed out to me that it actually goes back to ancient times. There's examples of this back in ancient time. King Solomon, who in most people's view was the wisest man to ever live, and in his treatment of people, he made sure that when he was building the temple, that he reserved time for those workers to be back home and be with their families. He had a schedule that allowed them to be on the job doing what they needed to do, but at the same time he was conscious that those workers needed to be back with their families for an extended period of time. So it's a fundamental principle that's strong, and you're right, there has been a little bit of pushback. Folks have asked why Governor Lee did this at this time, and it's because he feels like it's the right thing to do. Yes, there's going to be economic benefit, I believe, to the state of Tennessee for it. It's going to help us with recruiting. It's going to help us with retention. But the bottom line is Governor Lee appreciates state employees. He went across the state meeting with them one-on-one. He wanted to do something significant to benefit state employees, and that's why he's implemented this executive order.
And I think that's in, if those who want to look that reference in the Bible up, I think it's 1 Kings chapter 5, verse 13 and 14 deals with when they were building the temple.
That's right. And, I want to encourage folks, if you can, to follow me on Twitter. It's a personal Twitter account, but I use it often for TSEA business, and I'm going to be tweeting out that scripture real soon here because I think it's an excellent point to be making as we continue to talk about the need for this family paid medical leave.
And his Twitter address is @RandyStamps.
Right. Pretty simple.
It's a little @ sign and Randy Stamps, all one word, no periods or anything in there. Okay. One other interesting thing is that federal employees now receive 12 weeks paid leave.
That's right. And speaking of Twitter, not long after Governor Lee made this announcement, President Trump thanked him for doing that because President Trump enacted this for federal employees in the last few months too. So it's a bold endeavor, but it's not unprecedented. And again, the president has seen this need for his employees, and we're glad that Bill Lee joined in with that movement to provide family medical leave that's paid.
I'm sure we'll be talking a lot more about this in the coming weeks and months ahead. Okay, so changing gears here a little bit. The Department of Correction there was a audit by the Comptroller the end of last year. We results were released to the legislature, and then we received those results earlier this month. The findings of that audit, and over the last couple of weeks, Commissioner Parker has been before a couple of bodies of legislators and hearings addressing these concerns and answering questions. And there are some concerns there that need to be addressed.
Well, there was a hearing that lasted about 5 hours recently, and another one just yesterday. So yes, it's been discussed a lot. There's a lot of frustration on Capitol Hill about it, and we're frustrated because there are some very serious issues that need to be addressed. But Commissioner Parker is doing a good job at addressing those issues. And first of all, this audit would never have happened under his predecessor because Commissioner Parker allowed the comptroller to come in and have unprecedented access to the Department of Corrections. So yes, when you have that kind of access, you're going to find issues and problems in such a large organization. And again, we're in communication with the commissioner about the issues. He's working hard to address them. But we've got to just realize that the Haslam administration and Commissioner Schofield dug a deep hole of problems in the Department of Corrections. And many of the problems that we're seeing today and that have been exposed by this audit are a result of that management style. A management style where we had a governor that said, you need to come and tell me how you can spend 3% less every year in a budget. And that hurt the Department of Correction. A lot of damage was done during the Haslam Schofield years. And I feel like it's unfair to hold Commissioner Parker completely accountable for everything that's happening there today. Again, because he has shown he's willing to find the problems and solve them. So right now, I would ask that our folks stand with Commissioner Parker and give him the chance to correct these problems that are exposed by the audit. And some of them are quite startling, and they get complicated. The issue of some fines that were levied and their payment is a complicated issue, and we're going to be getting the details out to our folks. But let's give the commissioner time to work through these problems, because in the discussions I've had with him, they've been positive, and I know he's genuine. And our association president, Donnie Cole, who has a lot of experience in the correction field, we're going to be meeting with the commissioner again just in next week. And so those discussions are ongoing. We've got great access there. So I'm encouraged mainly by the fact that the problems have been exposed and they're going to be addressed.
We're going to continue also, as always, to work with members of the legislature to support the department. But we're obviously going to keep an eye to ensure any of these decisions that are made are in the best interest of our employees working in TDOC.
Right.
But we'll keep you posted on the website. And look, I mean, I know there's some micro issues that come up. We've received a lot of questions after we put out a statement about this, dealing with supervisors and managers who are requiring certain things of their employees in this department, like mandatory overtime and some other things that they're focused on. And
let me be clear, we've got some management problems in the Department of Correction, without a doubt. We've got some supervisors who don't manage appropriately. They don't show the proper respect for correction officers and the whole line of folks in the correction field, and we're working on that. And DOHR is supposed to have a program where they help train supervisors and managers on what's appropriate and what's inappropriate. And in all candor, there's probably some bullying going on in the Department of Corrections, and we've got to address that. But again, the trend is in the right direction. Things are getting better. It's a huge organization. It's the largest organization in state government, and we've got to give Commissioner Parker time to right the ship.
One last thing that developed last week, and then Randy, I think, had some comments on higher ed, but the University of Memphis announced that they're going to increase their minimum wage to $13 an hour. President David Rudd emailed faculty and let them know that all their regular hourly wage employees will be moved to $13 an hour by July 1st of this year.
And that's great news. He's keeping a commitment. I know, it takes a little bit of patience sometimes for him to get to that $15 level, but we commend him, and we have along the way, because he's made a commitment and he's keeping it. I think some of the impatient comes from the fact that the UT Health Science campus has already moved to $15 an hour as a minimum wage. That's a smaller campus, so it was a little bit easier for them to move there more rapidly to $15 an hour. But I got to visit the UT Health Science campus recently and visit with the personnel folks there. So when it comes to higher ed, the benefits that we're able to provide our members are based upon the relationships we build with the personnel folks and the university presidents and the chancellors along the way. So we're continuing to build there, and it is great news. And the president of University of Memphis needs to be commended for his work, and we thank him, genuinely thank him, for continuing to move up that salary range.
This last week, we met with representatives from University of Memphis, ETSU, and TSU, and we're active on the Hill. We're always, whether it's a formal meeting or we're bumping into somebody in the hall, we're having these conversations. And of course, like Randy mentioned, it's dealing with higher ed is a little bit of a different challenge because you're dealing with individual universities, individual campuses, and that's kind of how you have to do business with higher ed. The funding is approved based on what the universities need, but how those universities spend those funds is up to the university. And so legislature doesn't really have or doesn't really take the lead on that. They allow these universities to make those choices. So
Right.
It takes a little bit longer, and it's a little bit more splintered of an effort for us, where we can't just go to one place and have that conversation. We have to travel around to these different schools.
It is difficult, again, because higher ed has always been very independent, so we have to strike that balance of moving them in the right direction and still respecting their independence.
All right, I'm Chris Dauphin, your TSEA Communications Director, and this is Executive Director Randy Stamps, and we'll see you next time. Well, that's this month's episode of AskTSEA. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to submit questions to our show, email those to asktsea@tseaonline.org or visit our website at tseaonline.org/ask-tsea. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at TSEA Online. That's all for this month. Have a great month. We'll see you next time.